afternoon. I'm David Rossi, Interim Communications Director for Summit County Government. Welcome to the September edition of County Connection. With me today are the Board of County Commissioners, starting with Elizabeth Lawrence, Tamara Pogue, and Josh Blanchard. How are you guys today?
Good.
Fantastic.
Oh, great.
How are you,
David.
David?
Doing really well. Let's just kick off, shall we? Weather's been great outside this past weekend. The aspens are starting to finally get to their peak here in the middle third of the month, middle half. I'm middle-aged, so I don't remember. Weather and wildfire. We want to talk about having a lot of rain last week, which took us down to from high fire danger down to moderate. So Josh, tell us a little bit about how the fall looks to be shaping up.
Absolutely. So it is, of course, fall season where the trees start to change, the aspens start to change their colors. That also means that typically things are drying out a little bit. We've gotten some good news that the lower southern part of Summit County has actually come out of those drought conditions, which is really exciting. But that doesn't mean that that the trees and the grasses aren't dry. And so as we move into the fall season, of course, we know there's more people that will be taking advantage of the colors, coming up to our community, out and about. We just want to remind folks that fire and wildfire is still something we have to think about and take seriously. So while you're up here, we want to make sure that you're careful, you're making good decisions. We are anticipating some rain a little bit later this month, but that doesn't mean that we shouldn't be any less cautious.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And while we're outside, let's go a few valleys over and talk about Camp Hale.
Yes.
You've been working really hard on advocating for Camp Hale to be designated a national monument along with the 10-mile range. Explain to us the process of how that's gone, what Camp Hale is, and how you feel about maybe getting the federal endorsement.
Yeah, of course. Well, thanks for the question. So the CORE Act has been ongoing for about a decade. It's really led by Senator Michael Bennet as one of our Colorado senators, and it's really to further protect public lands in certain areas, I would say on the western slope of Colorado. Us in Summit County are the most eastern part of that, and includes the 10-mile range, Quandary, some areas up around A Basin, etc. The CORE Act has gotten stalled. Last summer I had the honor of meeting Secretary of the Interior, Deb Haaland, to talk about the CORE Act, but it's stalled when it gets to the Senate, of course, as many things are right now. And so I believe Senator Bennet, and having to talk with the White House, realized the CORE Act needs to pass. We need to take these protections, but it's not happening in the current political climate that we're in. And so the brainchild really came from Senator Bennett's office. What if parts of the CORE Act we instead designate as a national monument? So that includes Camp Hale, which is almost everyone knows in Colorado, served as training ground for the 10th Mountain Division soldiers during World War II. They also trained over in the 10-mile range, which is an important piece of history, and a lot of people don't know that. And Frisco was a really important part of that as well. And it really helped start the ski industry business in Colorado. Of course, the 10-mile covers peaks, 1 beginning in Frisco and 10 on the south side of Breckenridge. And it also includes Quandary Peak, which is the most visited 14er in the entire state of Colorado. I think to wrap this up, we really look to the CORE Act just providing us additional protections. And so we presented a few weeks ago to Secretary of Agriculture, Tom Vilsack, another President Biden's cabinet members, and this has so much Forest Service land. We know that we're underfunded in the White River National Forest and right here in the Dillon Ranger District. So this would help provide us more funding and give us greater opportunities to protect this vitally important area.
So the White River National Forest is our most visited national forest in the country, is that right?
That is true. It's also here where we are in the Dillon Ranger District. It's located right across from Target and Silverthorne is their home office, but the Dillon Ranger District is the most visited part of the most visited national forest in the U.S. So we have more visitors right here in our national forest, but the funding does not keep up with that. The federal funding, it's a weird formula how they do it. Since so much of our land is ski areas, those fees that are paid stay in D.C. They don't come back to the White River National Forest.
Great. So we're going to keep our fingers crossed that we will get a new designation and some new support for the 10-mile range in Camp Hale. Moving right along, let's talk about a recent big purchase. Let's talk about the hotel just off of Tiger Road, whose name draws a lot of confusion.
The Lodge, formerly the Wayside, and at one point a baseball camp, which I only just learned. Yes, we are really pleased that we were able to buy that with our partners at the town of Breckenridge. I think some of you will remember from past episodes, we divided our housing plan as Summit County government into short-term, middle-term, and long-term. And so the purchase of hotels to convert into workforce housing is sort of our short-term strategy. It is the most immediately available to our workforce, one of those strategies. Our Lease to Locals program was another one of our short-term projects, and that's one where we transition STRs back into long-term. Our middle strategies are around changing codes, changing regulations, making it easier for developers to develop land, and then obviously longer term are our actual developments where we build housing. There's a number of other strategies in between. But the Lodge, or the Lodge, is our second hotel acquisition as Summit County government. It has 38 rooms. A lot of them need a little bit of upkeep and repair and those kinds of things, so we'll be doing that over the next few months, and then we'll be able to make it available to workforce. In the meantime, we're reserving some of those rooms for what I would call our critical workforce, folks that plow the roads, for example, or be a good example, the folks that drive the buses, all those folks that make sure that we can all get to work in the morning first thing bright and early. So we're really excited that that is now available to our community and much more to come.
Fantastic. Also, you were just recently appointed by the governor to the Middle Income Housing Authority.
That's
Real
right.
quick, what is that?
So the Middle Income Housing Authority is a new housing infrastructure in Colorado. It's really designed to help address what's called the missing middle. But those are those folks who were in deed restricted or might have been in deed restricted housing at one point in time. And we're planning to move into market rate housing. Unfortunately, because there's now such a huge gap between our deed restricted housing and our market rate housing, that's no longer possible. And so we've had this gap be identified called the missing middle. Those are folks that have probably been in Summit County for a little longer, are in some of our middle or higher wage jobs and can't access any kind of housing. Pharmacists, for example, are a really key sort of group in this middle income. So the governor and the legislature last year created this new housing authority and they funded it. And the idea is to work with developers and local governments to try and figure out new housing strategies for that middle, that missing middle perspective. So lots of, I think, new and innovative strategies will come out of this group, and I am excited and honored to be able to serve.
Congratulations, that's great. So when we come back, we're going to talk about some personnel around the courthouse and some new folks. We're going to talk about the shooting range and some events that are coming up when we come back.